Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Never Alone. Let's continue. So, yeah. Third hour or so and we're still platforming. We should be going into, I think, a new area now. Feels like we could potentially be crushed to death if we're not careful. It feels like the game is implying that that is what's happening. Now the problem here is that some of this could be foreground and some of this could be background. As far as what you're saying. But I guess if we just take it slow, we'll be fine. And I've just seen an owl at the top, which tells me that there is, I guess, this possibility. Up, 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 up. There we die. I have a concern here as far as maybe there's a little bit of jadedness in why this is a video game in the first point. Like, maybe the tribe members, I guess I got crushed there. The First Nation people are saying, oh, our kids don't even care about our culture, so let's try to speak to them via video games about our culture, which, I mean, at a certain level, isn't that what some of like the Veggie Tales type of religious videos and tapes are all about, in that they think kids, or at least young kids, are not interested in Christianity in Veggie Tales examples, so they make a cartoon wrapper in Veggie Tales around Bible stories. And particularly in video games, that has never worked. Where you've tricked kids into learning effectively. But even if that isn't the case, there is this growing feeling of the platforming really just getting in the way of the cutscenes. And then the cutscenes not being long enough to make up the difference there. Like inherently, you could have made a whole game around the same story and then not had the cultural insights and just revealed at the last second in the credits that this is based off of a traditional First Nations tale that was told to us.
My brother was out seal hunting. He got attacked from behind and managed to grab his knife and save himself. When he came to realize, oh no, it's a mother. We've always known traditionally that we avoid killing a mother. It's always been sacred to us to protect them. He had to present himself to the council, and so he was given the job to mother the baby, and we kept it. It got so big it went over the barricade one day and got to the dog food, and that was an indication that, brother better go teach it how to survive on its own. So he did. I really got attached to the bear because I more or less grew up with it. And some days when brother took him walking, once in a great while he'd put me on the bear and I would ride on it like a horse. I was just happiest little girl in the world.
It feels like they didn't even have them like rephrase it, because it said at the very beginning there, she said the brother got attacked, but she didn't say by a bear. It took about a minute for them to reveal that he had been attacked by a bear, and they had to use the visuals of the screen to indicate that, which, yeah, that's really making up for just poor interview skills, in my opinion. It feels like either they were rushed for time, or they just didn't bother to do second takes at all, and they don't seem like they had a particularly good or well prepared interviewer, because it's really just not going into enough details. Most people who are lucky enough to have older family members can, and probably have, been able to draw out much longer stories out from elderly family members or friends, because storytelling in general amongst older people is a major thing that they have gotten good at, and they've lived long lives, usually with enough of an interesting thing to say, enough interesting stories to speak on. This feels wonky in the controlling as it's moving up and down. See, it seems to me like I should be able to reach the platform on the right, but it seems like the game really doesn't want that to happen, and instead it feels like it wants physics to kind of push you upward as you're platforming. We really can't see that much different though, unless the game goes a little crazy and more spiritual in the way it depicts things. We're going to see ice, we're going to see snow, and that's pretty much it. Even the little people seem to really have only played that small part, whereas you could definitely see making a game where you expand. Yeah, you're dying a little too often here. That is a problem I have with a lot of that's a problem I have with a lot of platformers. Platformers generally do start becoming like very difficult precision platformers. So the game is basically having to tell me that I need to like run up here, tap here, jump this way, and I needed to do all of that way quicker. You would think a game like this might very well be the kind of game that you would play where you never died. Okay, what now? Now what? We're still trapped. So now come down here and throw the bolas at him. Which, it definitely just does not feel like the bolas are designed in such a way for that to happen. Okay, what am I supposed to do now? Yeah, what am I supposed to be doing? I just don't get it. Okay, so we're back, I guess, to hitting this. I guess maybe the idea is that eventually we would reach something, but I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be reaching or what I'm supposed to be doing here. It seems to me like we go this direction now. Best case scenario, I run over here and jump over like that. It clearly feels like it's an example of them being way more interested in the cultural insights than the game, because the game could use some polish. And like, it really feels like, because they have this extra desire to make sure everybody sees the cultural insights, that the game itself should just have no lose conditions, and it probably shouldn't have the ability to miss any of the owls, because it would be fairly annoying if I had to play this game a second time. There's just not a lot of meat on the bone as far as the platformer here. And certainly I could say it might be interesting to get more cultural insights that talked about other stories, and that there would be several stories here, instead of just the girl and the fox story. I feel like First Nations language is incredibly like short in that it's just not very wordy language, and the way they pronounce things also comes off to an English ear, English speaking ear, like they're always a little bit depressed or low on energy. But yeah, it's probably just their language. It's hard, though, for me to, particularly as we listen to the narrator, hear if there's supposed to be any inflection or emotion in the tale. It feels very cold, just being spoken by somebody just because. So here we have a quote not attributed this time. Although Kunu Kasa Yuka was a good hunter during the clear weather, the blizzardy weather simply was not a time to hunt. Is Kunu Sa Yuka the main girl that we've been playing as? They really haven't been saying her name. The narrator has been saying the girl. And there we had a cinematic cutscene of more of that Sanskrit, and now we're swimming, and we are really getting into the realm of magic, but we're also getting into the realm of breaking what we've learned about video games so far. Like, because it would have made a little bit more sense for there to have been a spirit that saved you or gave you the ability to... I can't reach even that height. That's a little disappointing. But yeah, a spirit giving you the ability to swim in icy water makes a lot more sense to me than you just automatically being able to swim in icy water. Because that implies now every time I fell in the water and died earlier, that was just some weird decision. And we're kind of going non-traditional here in that we have to work our way to the left instead of always going towards the right, and it definitely seems like we're going to platform and work our way up higher. Although, I'm not 100% sure that there isn't just like a spirit I was supposed to hit there with the bola. Let's watch this next insight. You can see here a character with a gun, and yeah, definitely things changed quite a bit for First Nation cultures, I imagine, once you start to have gunpowder guns, tobacco, things being brought in from other cultures. It went, I guess, a little bit better for the Alaskan First Nations versus the mainland United States First Nations, where Native Americans were simply shot with guns and killed and nearly exterminated. But yeah, it must have been incredibly more difficult to hunt without those kinds of weapons. In particular, since you just don't even have a lot of resources. There's not going to be a ton of wood and to make spears or bows and arrows from. You're going to have to make a lot of things out of bone and animal parts.
In Arctic Alaska, hunting is a really important part of life. It's not just about going and shooting something, it's about going and putting food on the table. But more importantly, subsistence hunting isn't just about the insular family unit, it's about feeding the whole community. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about subsistence hunting in Alaska is that people go out and they'll go get, fish, or they'll get a caribou, and they'll get, seals and whales. And one of the first things they'll do is they'll say, oh, I need to take this to the elders. This isn't just about one individual surviving or one family surviving, it's about the whole community.
We didn't just go out and kill and put in a freezer. It's like a ritual that I learned from my parents.
It's all about relationship. I don't know. I think there's a lot of camaraderie involved, and just being out on the land or being out on the ocean. It's like getting back in tune.
I'd rather be out there. To me, once I go out there, it's the world that I learn from.
I can't speak to the percentages of how many First Nation members live much more like their ancestors versus how many move to the mainland of the United States or move inland and more south and live just what would be considered a modern Western lifestyle. But it is an interesting thought experiment per se to think, what if instead of this being First Nations Native American tribe talking about their lifestyle and depicting it as this is the way all people in Alaska live, what if it was Amish people in mainland United States making a video game? Well, that would be very weird for an Amish person, but let's just say it happened where they made a documentary and they implied this is how all members of mainland United States live. You could easily have some severe overfocus and dishonest reporting going on there. The percentages there are certainly going to break it down. A better example might be the vast majority, as I understand it, of Native Americans in mainland United States do really live that Western lifestyle, and they don't tend to even really speak their native traditional tongue or the language or do anything about the culture. They've that cultural genocide, just regardless of who caused it, has almost completely happened for new generations, or a lot of the new generation of Native Americans. It would be very weird to have a video game where they said in 2023, or they heavily implied that in 2023 all Native Americans in mainland United States are still riding horseback and hunting buffalo with bows and arrows, and that they are living what would be a fairly traditional lifestyle, when that's really what it is, what isn't the case. Well, at some point, I guess it doesn't really matter that much, however, because I look at this game not even really as a game that is trying to educate as to the aspects of what is really there. I look at this game as a new attempt in a new form factor to write a history book, preserve history. And so there, I only have to hope that they are being accurate about what once was, not what is. And what once was can be very wide as a requirement, because it could be what once was for one small tribe or one small family. Little House on the Prairie, as a TV show, might be a good example of that, where I bet a lot of that fictional TV show is fairly accurate to what happened to at least one family that lived on a prairie in the mainland United States a long time ago. I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing here. It seems to me like either I was supposed to have jumped on those platforms myself. Okay. So we're varying up what we're doing enough that I'm kind of forgetting what the trick here is. Now, I saw the platform there blink a little bit, but I don't think the platforms actually disappear, and I'm glad for that, because it would be rather annoying if the platforms were on a timer and disappeared. Although that is something that you usually do often see in platforming games. So I guess what we're doing is now going back. I like that the game is letting you swim faster. But as a game criticism, I also would have said it probably would have been nice if we could always have swam, just so that would have made more logical sense. And because of that, we could have always jumped between multiple actions. Now that we know swimming exists, there was far too much walking and jumping in a row in the earlier sections. There was a game called Broken Age that had two stories that really only met up at the end. I don't think that worked particularly well as a story, because I just don't think the story was particularly good, but I almost could see 2 or 3 stories in this case being split up. It's hard to tell a story about culture when you have a character that is just one person and their fox pet, and inherently this character is also kind of counterculture in that she went off on her own to investigate the blizzard weather, and that seems to me probably against, whoops, no fall damage. That seems to me that that's probably against what you would probably teach kids, girls in particular, is to not wander off on your own in the middle of the snow, where you could easily be lost in a blizzard. Okay. Attempt number 3. Unless I can just shoot this up here and that will actually hit it. Actually, it will. He got it moving around enough. So you're seeing a little bit of a snow breeze track here. Kind of explaining, I guess, where these will go until it doesn't want to go any further. What am I supposed to be doing here, though? I mean, color me confused. We obviously need to get up higher. We've never thrown bolas to interact with these after they've been created. Okay, so the trick, I guess, was she can climb, oddly, on the edge there, and then it follows the snow fox, and then the snow fox is climbing on the ice, which there is just a real logical inconsistency to all of that. Oops. And I really think all games should have much more logical consistency when you are playing it. I should never be in a situation where I'm confused as to what to do next. I really shouldn't be in a situation where the game does something that I'm not expecting, since I'm supposed to be in control of the character. We do all of a sudden have fall damage, which I find that strange. Okay. Maybe this is a case where... So you try to jump there, and it worked that time, but it didn't work the last time. So it seems like we are potentially going to run into that problem of these platforms potentially blinking out. You'd almost think that it probably would be better if one character survives, the other character would survive, and then it would be a case where the other character would just magically respawn if the other character fell and died. Also, the game is quick saving and putting a logo in the lower left hand corner when it quick saves, and it didn't actually warn the player that that's what it was doing. I find those warnings kind of annoying and unnecessary in modern times. Most players, unless this is the very first game you've ever played, know the game's quick save and that you shouldn't unplug your computer or console as it's quick saving. Although in all fairness, modern Windows 10, Windows 11, even if you did yank the plug out of the wall as it was saving, probably wouldn't cause as big of a deal as you would think. You still have a decent chance of not corrupting your save file, and we kind of really are well past the point in which consoles should have a small battery backup of some sort if it loses power to save files, or make multiple saves, which that's something you could have done, they could have been doing from the beginning. Maybe in an era of like the Nintendo 64, where you had very small amounts of storage, you wouldn't want to make a backup save file and then make a new save file, then delete the backup. But even in the Nintendo 64's case, let's say there was 1 megabyte of storage space and every save file used 1 kilobyte, so there was 1,000 slots for different save files for 1,000 games. That would still be plenty enough to just remove one of those 1,000 save spots and say, we're keeping that as a system reserve to make a new file, check that the new file has been written correctly, then delete the new file, the old file, only after we've checked that everything's been done correctly. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. Yeah. You just gotta get the fox, I guess, to stand in the right spot. I suspect we're not going to see much more to this game. Well, they're, I guess, introducing the idea of spikes. But I think we're gonna have the spirit platforms, and we're gonna have the bolas, and that's gonna be it. Now, I guess we're gonna flood this area, and then the spikes won't matter. There is something to recognize here that I just thought of. There is not a good justification. He doesn't get stabbed on the ice there, so that's good to know. So he stands here, and then that makes a swinging platform. So it looks like we're gonna potentially have swinging. And so we're getting tutorial. Whoop. Ooh, this is gonna be difficult, and this is really one of those cases where it feels like you almost have to have a co-op partner to actually play the game, because you really are implying that I'm gonna have to hit A, then hit Y, and then run to the left, and I'm not sure I shouldn't jump to the left, really. Unless there was... I guess that's the solution, is just stand in the middle. That is a much more reasonable solution. Yeah, anyways, I was saying, I just realized it's kind of crazy that there isn't hunting in this game. The game obviously doesn't want to get bloody, but it would make a lot of sense. I have no idea what I'm supposed to do now. So he has to get to this other platform basically to start that. And actually, I guess he has to be down here to get her to climb there. Yeah. We defeated that. We defeated the polar bear, but we didn't kill it. It kind of would make sense to have a knife as a character, even as a girl, and use that knife to have killed the bear and then butchered the bear, and then in butchering the bear you would have gotten more health, more energy, more food, maybe even more of the outfit to keep you warm, let you swim. It may be a case that culturally they don't really just believe in the idea, like other First Nation tribes, that completing a hunt gives you some spiritual energy and that you're gaining something, gaining a part of the soul of the animal when you kill a bear. So maybe they didn't want to make a game where you would gain strength and become stronger, or gain some special ability, some magical ability that is not part of their culture by killing the bear. But you could certainly say you ate and you became stronger and you could jump further. But you really can't have a whole culture that is built around hunting, and then have a game that's kind of bending over backwards to have you not actually hunt. It seems like the Western sentimentality, where hunting is often looked down on, particularly hunting as for sport is looked down on, has bled into this, where clearly this tribe has no problem with hunting at all. I could see not showing whaling, but honestly, they really should show whaling too. You got swallowed by a whale, it would kind of make sense for you to have to hunt a whale at some point later in the game. On that similar point, you also have left your tribe, who have just been driven off and destroyed by the bad man, and are on your own journey. Now I'm seeing bubbles here, and I wonder if that means there would be some point here where I start to struggle to breathe and hold my breath. Yeah. We defeated the polar bear. Had we eaten the polar bear rested, then that would have been a perfect time for the game to let you hold your breath longer. And see, I've almost completely forgotten that we've unlocked yet another cultural insight, so let's watch that.
Now we spend all our time out in nature. You get very intimate with the world. And over time, if you're living that life, you start to sense that everything has a spirit. There's a consciousness in everything. Everything is alive. If everything is alive, then we want to respect it. And if we're going to use it, we want to use it respectfully.
What I try to tell my nephews and nieces, you know, you love to hunt, you have to take care of the animals that you catch, preparing the food and eating the food that you catch.
Water provides you. The ice brings you life. It provides all those things that you need to be a part of your life.
That was something I grew up with. I grew up respecting the animals. I grew up respecting the land. And that, to me, that is why we as Iñupiat, as an Iñupiat culture, as an Iñupiat people, is why we're so successful.
So, yeah, they kind of are implying here that they do believe that there's a spirit and a life in everything, which you see that to an extreme. I believe it's in Shintoism in Japanese culture, where they take it to the extreme that a well-used umbrella that serves its owner well will eventually gain a spirit itself and become like a yokai, I think is what they're called. I'm not sure they're going to that extreme in this case, in their beliefs, but wonder if I'm supposed to just shoot a bola up there. Probably this is a case where the fox is just supposed to go over this point. You have a weird situation here where I can't jump out of the water. You have a character with their pet fox, and that helps you potentially avoid the silent protagonist problem that plagues a lot of games, and yet they're not doing anything with it. Interesting, the water pushes you down. So this isn't the direction they actually want me to go. They want me to actually go over here. You would think this girl might make some sounds or say some things as we're progressing, or you know, she might at the very least have a level of reactions when she's being chased and attacked. She's too quiet for her own good. And we just got an achievement called Swimming Through History, which maybe that means I've gotten all of the owls in this section. Not really sure where this is supposed to go, though. Seems to me like it could go anywhere. I guess it doesn't really matter. Let's just hit it. Yeah. I think my guy's stuck. Interesting. He's stuck in an animation. I don't think there's a way to unstuck him either. I think what would happen is if I tried to swim far enough away, the zoom out will eventually stop, and then I'll just have a wall stopping me from going any further. I severely doubt you could actually get wet, get your clothes wet, and it not freeze. Like, you would have to have some kind of hydrophobic oil or coating, like whale oil or something, all over your clothing to make it not freeze. Although there must be something that happens to polar bear fur and animals' fur that they can get in the ocean and it not freeze. I guess we have to see. First things first, let's watch the cultural insight. Then we may have to play the whole thing to get the cultural insight again after we reset a checkpoint. Interesting, that didn't even play. I had to hit A twice.
I think most central to the ideology of the Iñupiat is the idea of sharing.
Being able to feed the community, feed others. That's why we hunt, you know. In the old days, that's what you needed to survive, you know.
The sharing is important because it's how the community survives together collectively.
We just give. That's how I grew up. That's the way I'm always gonna be. Because of who we are, we always think about other people first.
If our people didn't
We're
share
using footage here.
in the old days, we wouldn't have survived in this harsh, you know, climate, environment.
Now, an interesting thing to point out is it's almost impossible, even for scholars and historians, to make a fair estimate on what is the best way to run a culture, raise your next generation, teach children, things like that. But certainly, I can heavily speculate that you hit a certain plateau point in your cultural knowledge and your society's knowledge, and that plateau point potentially goes even lower with the death of even one elder who remembers a bunch of stuff and just doesn't write it down, or writes it down pictorially in Sanskrit. But yeah, you can only learn so much if you are a small tribe and you're spending a significant amount of your time having your kids help hunt fish and learning to hunt and fish and just provide for your current generation and the next generation's needs. You're not learning in a school per se to do higher levels of thinking, programming, math, sciences. You're not inventing or learning the knowledge that would be needed to, for instance, create a battery that at some point 200 years down the line may be in the cell phones of every single modern citizen. Like, battery technology, really, 200 years, to 2,000 years old. They've seen early batteries experiments done in ancient Egypt, several thousand years old. That is the kinds of experiments that won't have practical use in your lifetime. It's the kind of thinking and knowledge that has to have a foundation so that you can have one Albert Einstein out of billions of people, so he can have a theory of relativity so that can lead to a understanding of just modern science and modern technology. And you just can't reach that when your culture is small and your culture is starved of resources, to the point where it is very much a luck-based thing as far as where your culture lives and how much resources they have. Hundreds of years ago, when children were working on farms in the mainland United States and not going to school, it was a very slow growing process, or a no growing process as far as education, and that's why you had a revolution of higher thoughts. Now, on the other hand, a lot of higher thoughts and higher education is sometimes not practical ever, and sometimes kind of pointless. And we may have hit a plateau in what you would consider a modern Western education system too, and we very possibly have lost a lot of more historical cultural elements because there's been an overemphasis on modern reading, writing, and arithmetic. But this picture certainly made me think of that, as you see all of these children, very young children, just holding fish, and we've seen no real education being mentioned and all. Now, I think that there actually are schools and in modern days, and kids do go to school, but the schools, I think, also only happen in the summertime, and then there is a fairly long period of wintertime in which you're snowed in and just living with your family. But also during the wintertime, it's my understanding that is also the point where you're not out hunting either. There is always going to be, we'll just have to reset from the checkpoint here, that cultural clash, in which for things to change, you have to convince people that things should change. And the very broad definition of a conservative person is a person who doesn't want to see things change, where the broad definition, speaking on global terms, sometimes conservative and progressives are used in terms in the United States in a fairly inaccurate way. But yeah, the very broad definition of a progressive person is someone who does want to see something change, and neither are 100% ever going to be right. Some things shouldn't change. Some things have a reason the way things are, even if the reason has been forgotten. But inherently, all humans can do is try to understand why things might be better if they stay the same, and try to understand why things might be better if they change, and experiment to understand. Don't be afraid of experimenting, don't be afraid of change. I don't know why the game is making me throw the bola multiple times. It's not really adding anything here. Again, it would just make more sense if the character got stronger, and throwing the bola once now is the equivalent of throwing the bola 3 times. I wonder what, like, pregnancy and childbirth is like for their people. Like, it almost certainly would be fairly tough difficult to have doctors come in, difficult to maintain a high calorie count for during a pregnancy, difficulty in just limiting activity. So all of this happened inside the whale. I definitely don't feel like I would have enjoyed this game if this had been the art style the whole time. But the Sanskrit got another achievement now. One day he wondered what is causing the weather to be like this anyway. Robert Cleveland Nasruk. We've gotten all the insights. How many insights do we have left? 8 more out of 24. So we're getting slightly different coloring and lighting and a different background now than it's a starry night, but this may be the 3rd act on a 3-act play. If I stand here long enough and don't press any button, will she pet the fox, or has she perhaps grown and will no longer do that? She's breathing into her hands, the fox is just standing there. I'll move forward a little bit and see if anything happens here. Yeah. Well, I could play for 9 more minutes, but I think this might be a very good point to just end this episode. I'm not 100% sure what we're really doing here. You got some nice reflection of the fox in the water. That's a nice animation aspect, but feels like we're going to just end up doing some more platforming. We're probably going to run into the bad man again, but we really aren't on some journey that the owl man gave us or anything like that. He didn't send us on a quest to seek out the truth or seek out any item after collecting his drum. We already were, I guess, on a quest to figure out what is causing the winter. Now, I think it probably would be a mistake if all of a sudden near the end of the game the narrative is just the Western man, the white man is bad. I mean, I could certainly buy into that argument in a lot of cases, but if all of a sudden we're climbing around an oil rig and that this is just modernization of oil pipelines in Alaska cutting through protected forests, and that is causing the winter, or we're in this in some kind of modern city that is just pouring out like CO2 into the atmosphere, and that is causing global climate change. Yes, we know those are the reasons, and we know those are bad things, but it pulls away from the educational aspect and the cultural focus of the game if part of the First Nations culture is just hating the white man. I mean, they've got a decent reason to hate previous generations of white men, and plenty of bad things have been done to them, but it takes a game that has been 100% positive and would turn it negative. So I suspect that's not what's going to happen here, which then just brings me back to wondering what is going to happen, if anything's going to happen. And I'm still very much wondering how much more game actually is here. We may very well end up just getting the last 8 unlocks in the matter of an hour, and then that would just be the game. Which at a certain level, I guess that is pretty much all I really should expect, and I'd be okay with that. remember, we still have the foxtails here, so if I'm getting 3 to 4 hours of gameplay in the main game, then I get 3 to 4 hours of gameplay in the foxtails, then that is approaching an 8 to 10 hour experience, which isn't terrible for an indie game, particularly something that is not even that interested in being a game and is more interested in having us watch the cultural insights aspect. I would hope that the foxtail story does have us be told a different story, perhaps, because they really haven't done a lot to make this little girl the main protagonist of the story. Clearly, it is the First Nations culture that is the protagonist of the story here, and she's just a representation of that. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's a link down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.